Chapter 4. With the deep unconscious sigh which not even the nearness of the telescreen could prevent from uttering when his day's work started, Winston pulled the speak-wire towards him, blew the dust from its mouthpiece, and put on his spectacles. Then he unrolled and clipped together 4 small cylinders of paper, which had already flopped out of the pneumatic tube on the right-hand side of his desk. In the walls of the cubicle there were 3 orifices. To the right of the speak right? I don't know. A small, God, I thought I survived that word, pneumatic tube, if I even know that. For written messages. To the left, a larger one for newspapers. And in the side wall, within easy reach of Winston's arm, a large oblong, I don't know, slit protected by a wire grating. This last was for the disposal of waste paper. Similar slits existed in thousands of tens of thousands throughout the building, not only in every room but at short intervals in every corner. For some reason, they were nicknamed memory holes. Okay. When one knew that any document was due for destruction, or even when one saw a scrap of waste paper laying about, it was an automatic action to lift the flap of the nearest memory hole and drop it in, whereupon it would be whirled away on a current of warm air to the enormous furnaces which were hidden somewhere in the. Winston examined the 4 slips of paper which he had unrolled. Each contained a message for only 1 or 2 lines in the abbreviated, I don't know if I read that right, jargon. I don't know those words. It's too late. It's 2 a.m. I don't give a shit. Not actually. Newspeak or newspeak. But consisting largely on newspeak words, which was used in the Ministry of Internal Purposes. They ran time 17.3 points, or March 1784. BB speech Mel reported. I don't know. Africa rectify time December 1983. First I'm so fucking. I don't 3. I don't give up. Time for. You know what? Just read it. It's right in here. La la. Independent, whatever. Should I read them? I don't know. Reporting. I know what they're saying. BB, they ordered. I assume the meaning of what they're saying. They borbed. I don't know any of are those real words. Double beloved, semi good breath. What the hell? Rewrite, full wise, up, sub. Yeah, they're definitely codes. Anti-feeling. With a faint feeling of satisfaction, Winston laid the 4th message aside. It was an intricate and responsible job, and had better be dealt with last. The other 3 were routine matters, though the second one would probably mean some tedious wading, whatever that means, through lists of figures. I need to know what that means. Sorry. Copied it. Walk with effort through water? Or another liquid? Or vicious substance?
Wade.
What? Is there an Arabic word for that? Oh, girl. Piran. I don't even know. No. See, you're stupid. That's your problem. I guess there isn't. What? There isn't. There isn't a meaning for that. Through lists of figures. Oh, is a metaphor. Oh. Winston dialed back numbers on the telescreen and called for the appropriate issues of the time, which slid out of the this word again, pneumatic tube after only a few minutes' delay. The messages he had received referred to articles or news items which for one reason or another it was thought necessary to alter, or as the official phrase had it, to rectify. For example, it appeared from the Times of the 17th of March that Big Brother, in his speech of the previous day, had predicted that the South Indian front would remain quiet, but that a Eurasian offensive would shortly be launched in North Africa. As it happened, the Eurasian Higher Command had launched its offensive in South India and left North Africa alone. It was therefore necessary to rewrite a paragraph of Big Brother's speech in such a way as to make him predict the thing that had actually happened. Or again, the Times of the 19th of December had published the official forecasts of the output of various classes of consumption goods in the fourth quarter of '83, which was also the sixth quarter of I kind of zoned out. I'm not gonna lie. Which was also the the sixth quarter of the ninth three-year plan. Today's issue contained a statement of the actual output, from which it appeared that the forecasts were in every instance grossly wrong. Winston's job was to rectify the original figures by making them agree with the later ones. As for the third message, it referred to I really zoned out on that one. I'm so sorry. I don't know what the hell I was saying. As for the third message, it referred to a very simple error which could be set right in a couple of minutes. As short a time ago as February, the Ministry of Plenty had issued a promise. A categorical pledge were the official words, that there would be no reduction of the chocolate ration. Isn't that chocolate ration during '84? Actually, as Winston was aware, the chocolate ration was to be. This gotta be like some type of wordplay, you know? Was to be. I don't know though, for what. Was to be reduced from 30 grams to 20. You already said that. To 20 at the end of the present. I hate when you repeat. I don't like repeating. To 20 at the end of the present week. All that was needed was to substitute what the French for the original promise, a warning that it would probably be necessary to reduce the ration at some point in April. As soon as Winston had dealt with each of the messages, he clipped his speak-written corrections to the appropriate copy of the Times, and pushed them into, oh my god, pneumatic tube. Then, with a movement which was as nearly as possible unconscious, he crumpled up the original message and any notes that he himself had made, and dropped them into the memory hole to be devoured by the flames. What happened in the unseen okay. What did we say that word meant? Yeah, maze. To which the pneumatic tube, what the hell, this word, like, you would not think it would pop up that much in one page. Led. He did not know in detail, but he did know in general terms. As soon as all the corrections which happened to be necessary in any particular number of the Times he had been assembled and collected, that number would be printed, the original copy destroyed, and the corrected copy placed on the files in its in its stead. Okay, you dyslexic weirdo. This process of continuous alteration, you race, what's the word? Dyslexic freak. Alteration was applied not only to newspapers but to books, periodicals, pamphlets. Anyways, you get films, soundtrack, cartoons, photographs, to every kind of literature or documentation which might conceivably hold any political or ideological significance. Day by day and almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been corrected, nor was any item of news or any expression of opinion which conflicted with the needs of the moment or allowed to remain on record. All history was a palimpsest. God, palimpsest. What the French? Palimpsest. I have no idea. Maybe another. Come on, just select. Maybe another British word. It has of the vibes of nastiness and not funny. Manuscript. How do you read that?
Palimpsest.
Palimpsest. Like what French? Who would say that word? A manuscript. I will get it. Okay, a document of some sort. Scrubbed clean and reinscribed scribed exactly as often as was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification had taken place. The largest section of the records department, for larger than the one on which Winston worked, consisted simply of persons whose duty it was to track down the all copies of books and collect all copies of books, newspapers, and other documents which had been superseded, whatever that word is, and were due to destruction a number of times, which might be because of change in political. We get it. Or mistaken a big one have been a dozen times, still in files. We get it. And no other copy existed to contradict it. Books also were recalled and rewritten again and again and were invariably reissued without any admission that any altercation had been made. Even the written instructions which Winston received and which he invariably got rid of as soon as he had dealt with them, never stated or implied that an act of forgery was to be committed. Always the references was to slips, okay, errors, misprints, or whatever, which it was necessary to put right in the interest of accuracy. But actually, he thought as he readjusted the Ministry of Plenty's figures, it was not even forgery, it was merely the substitution of one piece of nonsense to another for another. Most of the material that you were dealing with had no couldn't oh good lord. Couldn't how do you even I don't know how to read. Connect I wanna say connection, but I know it's wrong. Connect yeah, I have this Chinese words, man. I don't even know. What?
Connection.
That is not what I put in. That is not the same word. Let's just move on. It's 2 a.m. I don't give a fridge. With anything, even in the context, is this like another word for connection? That's impossible. It cannot be written. I think it's just a typo. I don't know. With anything in the real world. Not even the kind of, oh my god, you wrote it twice. It's not a frigging typo. What is that word? That is contained in a direct lie. Statistics were just as much a fantasy in the original version as in the rectified version. A great deal for the time you were expected to make them up out of your head. For example, the Ministry of Plenty's forecast had estimated the output of boots for the quarter at 145 million pairs. The actual output was given as 62 million. Winston, however, in rewriting the forecast, marked the figure down to 57 million, so as to allow for the usual claim that the quota, whatever, had been over overfulfilled. In any case, 62 millions were no nearer the truth than 57 million, or 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 than 145 million. Very likely no. I'm gonna have to like research this chapter because I am so asleep while I'm reading all these numbers. Very likely no boots had been produced at all. Like a liar. What is this shit? Like a liar, like a. Oh my god! Why do you do this to me? Is it like a liar or likely? Okay, let's just say likely, man. Likely still nobody knew how many. I don't care. I will change it. Nobody knew how many had been produced, much less cared. All one knew is that every quarter astronomical numbers of boots were produced. It's just so anti-Semitic. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. Oh my god. Anyways, I mean, being anti-Semitic this level, is this considered Nazism? Because this was like in the 40s? I don't know. Quarter astronomical numbers of boots were produced on paper, while perhaps half the population of Oceania went barefoot. And so it was with every class of recorded facts, great or small. Everything faded away into a shadow world in which finally even the date of the year had become uncertain. Winston glanced across the hall in the corresponding cubicle on the other side. A small, precise looking, dark chinned man named Tillotson, if I read that right, was working steadily away with a folded newspaper. What is like reading a book and seeing your name? Not your name, like your last name. Isn't that cool? On his knee and his mouth very close to the mouthpiece of whatever. He had the air of trying to keep what he was saying a secret between himself and the telescreen. He looked up and his spectacles, you really love spectacles, darted a hostile flash in Winston's direction. Winston hardly knew Tillotson, and had no idea what work he was employed on. People in the records department did not readily, whatever, I don't care, talk about their jobs. In the long windowless hall, hate that. I cannot work in a job like the company doesn't have windows. It's so icky. With its double row of cubicles and its endless rustle of papers and a hum of voices murmuring into rights, whatever it is, there were quite a dozen people whom Winston did not even know by name, though he daily saw them hurrying to and fro in the corridors or gesticulating, just if I don't give a shit. In the 2 minutes, hey, I'm getting sleepy now. I'm dozing. He knew that in the cubicle next to him, the little woman with sandy hair tailed day in day out, simply at tracking down the deleting from the press. The names of people who had been vaporized and were therefore considered never to have existed. There was a certain fitness in this, since her own husband has been vaporized a couple of years earlier, and a few cubicles away a mild, infectual, dreamy creature named Ampleforth, with very hairy ears, and the surprising talent of juggling with rhymes and meat trees. was engaged in producing garbled versions, definitive texts, they were called, of poems which had become ideologically offensive, but which for one reason or another were to be retained in the anthologies. And this hall, with its 50 workers or thereabouts, was only one subsection, a single cell, as it were, in the huge complexity of the records departments. Beyond, above, below, were other swarms of workers engaged in an unimaginable multitude of jobs. There were the huge printing shops with their sub-editors, their typography experts, and their elaborately equipped studies for the faking of photographs. There was the tail program section with its engineers and its sorry, and its teams of actors. Sorry, specially chosen for their skill in imitation voices. There were the there were the armies of Rodolfo, dolls, books, there were the vast where we get it. I mean, he's just trying to paint us a picture here. And somewhere or other, quite anonymously, there were the directing brains who coordinated the whole effort and laid down the lines of policy. hmm Which made it necessary that this fragment of the past should be preserved, that one falsified and the other rubbed out of existence. And the record department, after all, was itself only a single branch of the Ministry of Truth, whose primary job was not to reconstruct the past, but to supply the citizen Oceania with newspaper. Tara, we get it. You're really blabbing on the same thing. La 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 with every form stated lyrics. We get it. We get it. We get it. And the ministry had not only to supply the moral needs of the party, but also to repeat the whole operation at a lower level for the benefit of the proletariat, whatever. There was a whole chain of separate departments dealing with proletarian literature, music. Oh my god, we get it. Here were produced rubbishy, oh my god, sports, crime, astrology, sensational 5-cent novelities, film oozing with sex and sentimental songs which were composed entirely by mechanical means. Let me have you say that. On a special kind of god kaleidoscope, I don't give a shit, known as a versification. There was even a whole subsection, pornosic. Pornosic. It was called engage in producing the lowest kind of pornography, which was sent out in what the fuck is the lowest kind of pornography? In sealed packets, in which no party member other than those who worked on it was permitted to look at it. 3 messages had slid out of the, oh my god, pneumatic tube while Winston was working, but they were simply matters. They were simple matters, and he had disposed of them before the 2 minutes hate interrupted him. When the hate was over, he returned to his cubicle, took the whatever dictionary from the shelf, pushed the sorry, to one side, cleaned his spectacles, and settled down to his main job of the morning. Winston's greatest pleasure in life was in his work. Most of it was a tedious routine, but included in it there were also jobs of difficult and intricate that you could lose yourself in them, as in the depths of mathematical problems. uh, delicate pieces of forgery in which you had nothing to guide you except your knowledge of the principle. We get it. In your estimate of the party, when you say Winston was good at this kind of thing. On on occasions, he had even been entrusted with the rectification of the Times leading article, which were written entirely in newspeak. He annulled the message that he had set aside earlier. It ran time 3:12:83, reporting BB. The orator, those words again, double plus ungood refs on persons rewrite whatever. Full wise up sub on whatever. In old speak or standard English. That's real. Those are not garbage. Okay. Or standard English. This might be rendered the reporting of Big Brother's order for the day in the Times of December 3rd, 83 is extremely unsatisfactory. It makes references to non-existent person rewrite it in full and submit your draft to a higher authority before filling. Filling. I'm so hungry. Witness read through the offending article, Big Brother's order of the day. It seemed had been chiefly devoted to praising the work of an organization known as FFCC, which supplied cigarettes and other comforts to the sailors in the floating fortresses. A certain Comrade Withers, a prominent member of the inner party, had been singled out for special mention and awarded a decoration, the Order of Conspicuous Merit, second class. I'm gonna have to really research this chapter because I don't know what the hell I'm reading. Like, I don't know. I'm so sleepy. 3 months later, FFCC had suddenly been dissolved with no reason given. Yeah, sure. One could assume that Withers. I thought that was supposed to be a word. It's a name. God, you're not clear that it's a name. How'd you? Maybe you were. I don't know. I was half asleep. And his associates were now in disgrace. But there had been no reports of the matter in the press or on the telescreen. That was to be expected since it was unusual for political offenders to be put on trial. Okay, of course it was. Or even publicly denounced. The Great Purges involved thousands of people with public trials of traitors and thought criminals. We got that. They made object confession of the crimes and were afterwards executed. Were special showpieces not occurring often or oftener? Often? Okay. Then, once in a couple of years, more commonly, people who had incurred the displeasure of the party simply disappeared and were never heard of again. One never had the smallest clue as to what had happened to them. In some cases they might not even be dead. Perhaps 30 people personally known to Winston, not counting his parents, had disappeared at one time or another. Winston stroked his nose gently with a paper clip. In the cubicle across the way, Comrade Tillotson was still crouching secretively over his wine or whatever. He raised his head for a moment. Again the hostile spectacle flashed Winston wondered whether Comrade Tilson was engaged on the same job as himself. It was perfectly impossible. So tricky, a piece of work would never be entrusted to a single person. On the other hand, to turn it over to a committee would be to admit openly that an act of fabrication was taking place, very likely as, come on, we get it. As many as a dozen people were now and present brain was select this version of re-edited and set in motion complex processes of cross-referencing. That would be required under the live annotation. Winston did not know why Withers had been disgraced. Really? Come on. Perhaps it was for corruption or incompetence. Perhaps Big Brother was merely getting rid of a too popular subordinate. Perhaps Withers, or I love that his name is Withers. This is so on the note. Or someone close to him had been suspected of heretical tendencies, or perhaps what was likely of all. The thing had simply happened because purges and vaporizations were a necessary part of the mechanics of government. The only real clue lay in the words rough on persons, which indicated that Withers was already dead. You could not invariably assume this to be the case when people were arrested. Sometimes they were released and allowed to remain at liberty for whatever, 2 years before being executed. Very occasionally, why didn't they run? Skip. Very occasionally, some person whom you had believed dead long since would make it ghostly or whatever. By his testimony, this time forever. Withers, however, was already an unperson. What does that mean? He did not exist. Okay, thank you. He had never existed. I have like 2 pages left now. He had never existed once. Winston decided that that it would not be enough simply to reverse the tendency of regular speech. It was better to make it deal with something totally unconnected with its original subject. He might turn the speech into the usual denunciation of traitors and thought criminals, but that was a little too obvious. While to invent a victory at the front, I feel like this is the most important chapter, and I'm dozing off. Or some triumph of overproduction in the ninth 3-year plan might complicit the records too much. What was needed was a piece of pure fantasy, so only this his minority made Comrade Ogilvy, I don't even know that is, who had recently died in battle with that name. In heroic circumstances, there were occasions when Big Brother devoted his order for the day to commemorate some. I don't give a shit. It's the same kind of woman. Party member whose life and death he held up as an example worthy of following. Blah, blah. Today he should commemorate. We already said that. It was true that there was no such person as Go, but a few lines of print and a couple of faked photos to bring him to existence. Aww. Winston thought for a moment, then pulled the speaker towards him and began dictating in Big Brother's familiar style, a style at once military and pedantic. I don't even care to know. And because of a trick of asking questions and then promptly answering them, what lesson do we learn from this act, comrades? The lesson, which is also one of the fundamental principles of England socialism, that etc., etc., easy to intimidate. At the age of three, Comrade Ogilvy had refused all toys except a drum, a submachine gun, and a model helicopter. I mean, can you imagine? At 6, a year early by a special see, why are you putting X? Why Chinese relations of the rules? He had joined the spies at the 9. At 9, he had been a troop leader. At 11, he had denounced his uncle to the thought police. My goodness. After overhearing a conversation which appeared to him to have criminal tendencies. At 17, he had been district, I don't know, organizer, a district organizer of the Junior Anti-Sex League. At 19, he had designed a hand. We are glad he's dead, to be honest. He had designed a hand grenade, which actually that's cool, which had been adopted by the Ministry of Peace, of course, and which, at its first trial, had killed 31 Eurasian prisoners in one burst. Wow. At 23, this goes on. He had perished in action. Yay. Perished by enemy jet planes while flying over the Indian Ocean with important we don't give a shit's body with his machine gun. I don't know. Into deep water. Dispatches all and all. An end, said Big Brother, which it was impossible to contemplate without feeling of envy. Big Brother added a few remarks on the purity and single-mindedness of Comrade Ogilvy's life. He was a total abstainer, poor kid, and a non-smoker. He, oh my god, had no recreations. What does that mean? Like no kids? Except a daily hour in the gym. They're all insults, man. In the gymnasium. And had taken a vow of celibacy. They're all insults. I mean, there's nothing wrong with celibacy, but like, these people. These characters are supposed to be insults. Believing marriage and the care of family to be incompatible with a 24-hour-a-day devotion to duty. He had no subject of conversation except the principle of whatever, and no aim in life except the defeat of the Eurasian enemy and the hunting down of spies, saboteurs, whatever, whatever, and whatever. Winston debated with himself whether to award Comrade Ogilvy, whatever, the Order of Conservative Merit. In the end, he decided against it because of the unnecessary cross-referencing that it will entail. I love it. He was like, I'm just too lazy. Once again, he glanced at his rival in the opposite cubicle. Something seemed to tell him with certainty that Tillotson was busy on the same job as himself. There was no way of knowing whose job would finally be adopted, but he felt a profound conviction that it would be his own. Comrade Ogilvy, unimagined an hour ago, was now a fact. It struck him as curious that you could create dead men, but not living ones. Comrade Ogilvy, who had never existed in the present, now exists in the past. Yeah. And when once this act of forgery was forgotten, he would exist still. He would exist just as authentically and open the same evidence as Charlemagne. I don't know how to read that. Or Julius Caesar. I don't know what the fuck that is. Chapter 5. Woo! We are so done. Yo, I'm gonna go to sleep. And then, like, subscribe, fucking comment. I don't give a shit. Bye!